Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're Team A, and we're working together here at the G20 Summit to address one of the largest, most global issues, climate change. Today we're going to take you through our vision, talking about why we need to address this here, in this room, in this place. We're going to talk about our key policies, our roadmap forward, and how we plan to get there. We're going to talk about the key stakeholders, each and you here in this audience, who are working together to create a sustainable future. We're going to talk about how it works and why our path forward is the best. And we're going to offer an implementation timeline supplemented with a strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats outline. And we're going to talk about our supporting stakeholders as we move forward through a climate transition. So before I begin, I want everyone to sit up in your chairs, plant your feet on the ground, and observe this photo. You are all floating through space at thousands of miles per hour on this planet. But more so, you're in this room because you have a curiosity about the future of this Earth. And I believe that by working together, you can achieve long-shot goals and build a sustainable future for all. So moving forward, at the G20 Summit, we get a chance to be even more micro-specific about those outcomes. You represent 85% of the world's economy, 80% of world trade, and 65% of the world's population. Together, you can make a difference. And that difference in our vision is a 2 degrees Celsius target by 2030. We believe that that commitment can carry through 2100 through long-term buy-in, and those stakeholders, all of you in this room, can result in an inclusive and transparent process to a sustainable and prosperous future. Thank you.
So before we jump into the economic variables of our policy model, we came to a consensus with all of our stakeholders that there are 3 particular policy solutions that we want everything to focus on. 1, that's our carbon pricing. 2, what we do with our carbon pricing and how we use a tax and shift economic model, and primarily focusing on land use. How do we use our land? How do we shift the use of our land? So to jump right into our economic variables, our carbon pricing will start at $140 per ton, and the allocation of our carbon tax, 80% will go to renewable energies and 20% to the public.
So now we really want to make sure that we tie our sticks with carrots at the end so that there's some incentive for us to really move forward towards this goal. So as you can see, we really want to shift the tax, which will be primarily in the fossil fuel industry in the areas of the oil and coal, onto and into these more renewable industries, and especially focusing on our new technology, which we agree with earlier groups is really the way to move forward with solving this problem and meeting the 2 degrees Celsius target. So you can see here on our gray line that we've shifted as much as we can into subsidies in that new technology sector while still remaining committed to our renewable energies, and then also providing some incentive as well in the gas, which is much cleaner burning than coal and oil, and also shows a lot of promise for existing companies in the fossil fuels area as a way to move forward, because they also see that this is a problem that they will need to address moving forward. We also looked at incentivizing better land use, both for reducing carbon emissions, but also for creating carbon sequestration opportunities through good use of forestry and agricultural land. And so one of the partners that is a really natural partner for the G20 countries is the UN RED program, which really works to bring both public and private partners together to incentivize a lot of these both reductions in emissions and also increased opportunities for creating carbon sinks.
So now I can tell you're waiting with bated breath. You want to know what exactly is going to be the outcome of this policy that we're putting forth, and we're actually going to be seeing a reduction in emissions. And how did we do this? We did it through new technology, through investing in it. We also did it through ensuring that energy efficiency. So I'm actually from the energy efficiency sector. We decided that we'd lock ourselves into a commitment to growing our energy efficiency over this time period. We also did it by changing behavior. And so some of this is all interrelated, as you all well know, is that we have to be able to have new technology for new behavior to come forth. And so that's something we want to instill upon you guys today and to think about, is that these things are all interrelated, and part of the reason that we're going to be seeing this reduction, not only the emissions, but as well as the temperature, and getting it down to that 2 degrees Celsius goal, which we all came here today to hear about, is because we were able to change behavior. We were also able to encourage new technology. And some of the trade-offs of that are fossil fuel industry. You're looking at an industry that's going to be not receiving the same amount of subsidies as the sustainable energy industry. But that's going to be something that's important because we realize that going to the future, either we're going to be able to encourage these new emerging energy markets, or we're going to be able to have to be reliant on these older, dirtier ones. And so that's what we wanted to shift to. And so with that 2 degrees Celsius shift, we'd like to talk about our strengths, weaknesses right now.
Now, for our strengths, we're able to meet our goal of the 2 degrees Celsius. Not only that, we've scored feasibly high on our feasibility aspect, not to be redundant. We also have a reasonably high average for stakeholder contentment and a diverse source of energies, like renewable resources and the like. For weaknesses, the only weaknesses we found were with, again, if you saw the common theme of the energy efficiency goals, which were very static and took time to implement. But we also found another weakness, which was innovation dependence, which is a common theme with new technologies. But that also provides the opportunity. The opportunity where we could first develop a tax structure that would allow for a firm standing in creating those new technologies, and then making those 5% tax incentives, and also bringing us those taxes to make us to fund our new technology, and which will allow us to be resilient with areas such as land use. But we also have threats like political instability, various stakeholders, which can be like herding cats, especially in an area like climate change, and also the question of buy-in, which such diverse stakeholders leaves us with a variance of how developed countries versus undeveloped countries can have their starting point in which they will buy into the program.
So our implementation timeline gauges first with a carbon tax kicking in 2018, sunsetting in 2100. We want to start levying funds as soon as possible to start financing these new developments in technology, energy efficiency, and drawdown of emissions on the whole. And those drawdowns start occurring from the coal, oil industries primarily, beginning with full phase out of coal, beginning in 2015, and the sunset happening as soon as possible with a 10% maximized retirement rate. Second, oil, we're looking at kicking off in 2015. Also taxes on this industry, and also scaling back through retirement. We do identify that a gas subsidy provides a low carbon intensity bridge to development of alternative renewable technologies. So kicking in 2015, this was a concession that we can bring in stakeholders from the fossil fuel industry to buy in. Biomass provides an opportunity for land use, as well as we considered this a bridge for the developing world. Areas that need energy right away. Can we develop agriculture and biomass intersections, and at that nexus provide to alleviate poverty? Nuclear subsidies, we believe nuclear can also help us bridge into renewable energy. We're looking for innovations in this space to make it safer, cleaner, and less of a waste problem. And most importantly, new tech, where most of our money will be financing. Starting with the baseline of renewables, we believe that with this implementation timeline, we can create a future in which everyone in this room can contribute to alleviating both the most harmful impacts of climate change and be part of the solution and the opportunity for our future. Thank you very much.
What was your GDP and population?
Population was 2, GDP was 1.8.
Well, 1.9. One more. Yeah, population was 2 and GDP was 1.9.
Yeah, I was just curious.
It looks like you're starting your taxing and subsidies in the past. How does that affect your model going forward if you were to start in 2007?
Great question. So we were using an older model, but we believe that the forecasting begins. So we missed out on 2 years of opportunity to gather revenue. But we also have higher scales. Our tax rate was at $140 per ton of CO2. That means revenue that can be levied as soon as starting 2017, as soon as policies are on the books, to start financing these alternative solutions.
Does it affect your 2-degree target?
So because we had an outdated model, we didn't have a chance to do the sensitivity analysis, but great spot for potential improvement. Yes?
So you described investments in gas, basically as forming a bridge for developing countries to transition. Don't you also risk just entrenching another fossil fuel structure, and then you have suddenly coal and natural gas to get over in these countries, as well as
Yeah, great
I think that's and I think a really common theme when we come to the table to talk about climate change is that the fossil fuel industry is the one that's holding out. They're the one that's a challenge to work with. They're the one that's causing the problem and really needs to be brought to the table. And I think if we really look at the situation, it's not a question of if climate change is happening, and it's not a question of if demand is shifting in the kind of energy that we're using. It's only a question of how do we address that. And I think if we look at a common analogy is that the trains didn't go out of business. If the trains had thought of themselves as a transportation company rather than a train company, they wouldn't have gone out of business. So if you look at the fossil fuel, maybe that's not a good one, but if you look at fossil fuels as basically saying they're in the energy business and they want to create energy and they want to make profits by doing that. And if they look to the future, and many of them are already setting their own carbon tax internally, and you have other companies who are doing that because they see the writing on the wall and they know it's coming. So to really build that bridge of natural gas is more to reach out to the fossil fuel industry to say, great that you're moving in this direction. As you can see, it's not our highest subsidy, it's not our biggest focus, but to really say, we do want you on the table moving in the direction you are. But also, I mean, coal, investments in new coal power plants globally has drastically reduced, and even China has drastically reduced the amount of coal they're using. So we're just seeing it not anymore as a viable option. So this is kind of a bridge for them.
Okay, so although gas might be a cleaner burning fossil fuel, it's probably one of the more dirtiest to obtain. How did you take into account doing the 1% subsidy when things like the porterhouse or the Porter Ranch leak and things of that nature are taking place, and people are being able to light their water on fire because of gas?
Great question. I think that one big issue with especially issues around fracking here in California, you're looking at questions of oversight, questions of regulation, and questions of new technology development to constrain those leaks. So there's really three things at play. So through our subsidies, one part that I would like to see is a tie between that for new product development for extraction, but also safety standards, regulatory bodies, and auditing to preserve and make sure that there aren't any environmental externalities, especially when it comes as impactful as human health. Also, I want you to look at our sunset that we had around some of these subsidies to fossil fuels. The bridge isn't long-lived, and so it's just enough to get that kick start, get people to the table, and incentivize alternative solutions.
So you have the second highest subsidy is to nuclear power, and you say possibly we'll find a solution to waste. This is 75 years we've been looking for one and haven't found one. What gives you the optimism to think we'll do so in the future?
I think does somebody else? I'm happy to. Okay. One of the things around nuclear power is it's something that our group really struggled with talking about as well, and it connects also to your question about natural gas, Anthony, where when we look at climate change and we have the goal of really bringing the temperature down in this way, and in a way we end up ignoring a lot of questions of solid waste, for example, or water quality, or this other impacts that our solutions actually have. And so we really struggled with that, and we ended up in our renewable energy sector deciding to go ahead and invest in nuclear. And one of the other things that gets complicated, especially when you look at a major powerhouse, the US and the G20, is that we have a conflicted relationship between the way we deal with nuclear waste and nuclear power, and also the threat of nuclear terrorism and what's going to happen with that things. And if you look at countries like France or some of the EU companies who've been able to do a lot more with the way that they use that waste and can really reduce the amount of the impact of the waste end of it. That's where we decided to really look at the hope. And again, I mean, we, along with the other group, one of our weaknesses is that we are heavily reliant on the idea of new technology. And in this group, investing in the idea of developing these new technologies that allow us to create solutions that don't just create more problems, but actually create holistic solutions.
I want to add, she mentioned the idea, especially because this is G20 summit, we have other issues here than climate change. Nuclear proliferation is a big challenge. And if you can tie energy procurement and development to disarmament, then you have a win-win solution. That can create the recipe for world peace.
So we solve climate change and world peace, and we thank you for your time.